seeing the weather today, I know that I never would have arrived here in time, so I'm really pleased. I was meant to be in Cairo this week, and that didn't happen, so I was able to spend the whole time here. And I just want to say that I think this has been a fantastic conference, and I want to just pay tribute to the INI and the team. It makes me proud as an African to see a world-class standard being set here. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best. So I'm going to talk about whether Africa can find its own form of CSR, and specifically whether it can learn the lessons from the West. And as will quickly become evident, I'm quite critical of how much progress has been made in the West, and I'm encouraging Africa to learn those lessons, but not just to copy what's happened in the West. Because it's a very short presentation, and then we're running behind, so I'm under even more pressure, I will just say that anybody who is particularly interested in what I say in the presentation, it is summarized in the latest book. So it is based on this, and I'm going to try and summarize that in about 20 or 30 minutes. So let's go. Well, here in one slide is the dilemma that we face globally, and in fact, the dilemma that CSR faces. This is the evidence in one slide that CSR has failed. So why would you be copying a model of CSR that is failing? Okay, let me explain it. On the vertical axis is the ecological footprint of the world, countries of the world. This is a measure that takes the global resources of the world and divides it by the population. So the horizontal dotted line then is the level at which we would need to be if we only had one planet. So anything above that line are countries living beyond the capacity of the planet. The vertical dotted line is measuring human development. So that's anything above 0.8 in the Human Development Index of the United Nations. And so what we see is below the line, the horizontal line, all the developing countries still living within the capacity of the planet. Okay? And then what we see is above that line, those countries that have reached high human development completely blowing the resources of the planet. So if we look at the United States there at the top, if we live at the level of the average American, then we need 4.5 planets. The most disturbing thing is that the box on the right-hand bottom corner is where we need to be. We all want high human development, low ecological impact. And can you see that the box is empty? So no country is achieving this holy grail. And the development path that you see is that developing economies are completely missing out that box. So the challenge is, how do we move developing countries across without moving them up? And maybe even more difficult, how do you move developed countries down? How do you get them to make their lifestyle and their impact less resource and energy intensive? So what I want to take you through is the way that I make sense of what's going on in the world. I've traveled now to 50 countries trying to find best practice in CSR. And when I say CSR, I mean corporate sustainability and responsibility. And the way I make sense of it is to say that countries and companies are falling within one of 5 ages and stages: the age of greed, the age of philanthropy, the age of marketing, the age of management, and where we need to get to is an age of responsibility. So I'm going to talk you through that. If we start with the age of greed, these are companies that are completely focused on the bottom line. It's all about wealth creation for the shareholders and the owners. And so here on the left, we've got the collapse of Enron. Enron didn't just collapse because of some fancy creative accounting and fraud. They collapsed because they had a culture of greed. Yeah? In fact, they had CSR, as did Lehman Brothers, which also collapsed and helped to cause our global financial crisis. But the kind of CSR that they had is what we call defensive CSR. They only did enough to keep the authorities off their back and to keep communities from complaining. Clearly not enough. Bizarrely, Lehman Brothers won a CSR award after they'd gone bankrupt. So, the second age then is the age of philanthropy, where we see charitable CSR. The handsome gentleman on the left, who you probably wouldn't want to cross in the street at night, is Rockefeller. So you'll know the name. What you may not know is how he made his money. He created Standard Oil in the United States. And he was quite a shady character. He engaged in many anti-competitive practices. In one event, which was known as the massacre, he drove 24 of his 26 competitors out of business within 4 months. He got into cartels, price fixing, and it all didn't matter because at the end, he was very generous with his money, and he became the father of philanthropy. Yeah? So remember, it's what I said yesterday. Some companies believe that it's not about how they make their money, it's just about what they do with their money once they make it. And as I've traveled in many, many developing countries, and I see it here in Nigeria as well, many of these companies are stuck in this age of philanthropy, believing that charitable CSR is enough. It's important, but it's certainly not enough. The third age that we see is the age of marketing. And this is the idea of promotional CSR, the idea of greenwash. Okay, the reporting trend, unfortunately, feeds into this for a lot of companies if they don't take it seriously. And it's that idea, as we've got this cartoon on the right, which I think you've seen before. Rihanna, I think you used it as well. You know, where you've got this polluting factory, and they bring in the media and say, look at our wonderful paper recycling. Now, you may think that's fictitious. I've seen this in companies. I was in Argentina speaking to the board of the largest cell phone operator in South America, and I said, so what are you doing on CSR? And he was proudly telling me about the paper recycling program they had. So I said, what are you doing about electronic waste? That's your issue. Oh, maybe we should think about that. Okay, so the idea that you can just use CSR to promote your brand, to enhance your reputation, to improve your image is very strong. This is part of the business case. If you ask CEOs, as the World Economic Forum has done, why do they do CSR? They say they do it to enhance their brand and reputation. And that tells you where they're coming from. It's promotional CSR. The fourth age, which is where we see what many regard as best practice, is the age of management and the idea of strategic CSR. Okay, this is the idea that if we just get the codes and standards and management systems in place, so long as we have a manager and we have an audit and we have a report, then actually we're doing what we need to do. And I use the example of Coca-Cola on the right because, as some of you will know, they got into a lot of trouble in India, in a district called Kerala, where they were accused of draining the water supply. In fact, it was a little bit like Shell and Brent Spar. I mean, if you looked at the facts, it wasn't entirely true. Lots of farmers in the area, lots of other industry, everybody tapping the groundwater. Of course, the groundwater supply is going to go down. But it didn't matter because perception is reality, and they believed, the community believed, that Coca-Cola was responsible for taking their water away. And so Coke realized that their strategic CSR issue was water. And the last couple of years, they've done a huge amount to invest not only in their own water management, but improving the water supplies of the communities in which they operate. So this is what we call strategic CSR, aligning the issues to your core business, but not changing your core business. Now, what I believe is that these 4 ages and stages have taken us to that point where we're still failing. No matter if you look at any of the major data sets, whether it's carbon emissions, biodiversity loss, deforestation, the gap between rich and poor, corruption, these are all headed in the wrong direction. over the same period that we've seen more and more CSR of these types. So something is not adding up. And the reason that I believe it's failing is because of three curses, I call them. The first is the incremental curse. The way that we're doing CSR is a kind of a step-by-step continuous improvement. This goes all the way back to the quality revolution with total quality management, the ISO 9000 standard, and of course ISO 14000 and many of the other systems we've got today are modeled on that process. Does it create improvement? Absolutely. But what kind of improvement? Slow, gradual, voluntary improvement. You set your own targets and standards. Theoretically, you can be the most polluting company in the world. You can set a target of reducing your waste by 1% over the next 100 years, and you can get the certificate. Yeah? So it's not keeping pace with the scale and urgency of the problems. The second failure or curse is peripheral CSR. In most companies, it's not getting to changing the core business. And I use the example here of the tobacco industry. I love some of their old adverts. Blow in her face and she'll follow you anywhere. Does that still work?